Hello, Steve Ray here from CatholicConvert.com in my living room, surrounded by books. But anyway, this is the first time I've done anything like this, and I'm doing it for the Sacred Heart Academy as a fundraiser. And actually, I'm flattered that you'd ask me to answer all these questions. So here it goes. Number one, what's the coolest thing or interesting thing in your room right now? Well, I keep these on the shelf. These are sling stones from Israel. These are probably 3,000, 4,000 years old. They were used for battle, for artillery. This is what David would have used, something like this. But this is one I found myself in the cave of Adullam, where David was hiding from King Saul. Back in the very far reaches of that cave, I'm convinced this is 3,500 years old from Israel. So those are the coolest things in the room right now. You got a lot of other stuff too, though. Number two, donuts or bacon? Bacon, of course. Bacon's enough to transform any vegetarian. What's your favorite liturgical season of the year? I'd have to say the Annunciation, the feast day, because that is also the day of the incarnation, when God became man. Everything started there. That changed everything. It wasn't Bethlehem, because he was already human for 9 months before he arrived in Bethlehem. So for me, it is the incarnation on the day of Annunciation. But the season, I have to say Christmas, because I still am a kid at heart and I love Christmas. Winter, summer, fall, or spring? I'd have to say fall. We love the color change here in Michigan. We love the cool weather, and we have a family tradition since I was a little tot of apple cider and donuts when it comes to the fall. 3 words to describe the church: transcendent. It's above everything else. It's God's plan for eternity. Also universal. Since becoming Catholic, I've just realized that I've traveled all over the world, the universality of the church. It's like the great net when the apostles were out fishing. They brought in 153 fish. That represented all the people, nations, languages, and tongues of the world, and the net was the church, the universal net catching fish from every country, language, nation, and time. But also I'd have to say another word is the church is ancient, yet forever young. Who is the most influential person you've ever met? I'd have to say that would be St. John Paul II. My wife and I had the great honor of meeting him and talking with him twice, and we have a great miracle story of when he prayed for my wife, and I'll have to tell you that story some other time. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you about life right now? 10, of course. I'm a Catholic. God is in charge. He's ruling in the universe. I was born for such times as these. How could we not? I have 18 grandchildren and a beautiful wife and 4 kids. How could I not be a 10? All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And being Catholic is fun, too. If you could have dinner with anyone past or present, who would it be? My dad died 7 years ago. I'd like to have dinner with my dad one more time to say thanks. Favorite movie? Sorry about that. Favorite movie? All-time favorite movie? Probably Chariots of Fire, because it had a huge impact on me of what a real Christian, how he lives his life in the world. And probably the most current one I've seen is The Hidden Life. If you haven't seen it, see it. It is the cost of being a Catholic Christian in the real world. Powerful movie, The Hidden Life. Favorite book of the Bible? Can't give you one, got to give you 2. Genesis, because that's the beginning of everything. Just finished a 500-page commentary on Genesis. Also John, because John is based on Genesis, and the Gospel of John is rich and deep, and you can never fathom it. I also wrote a 450-page book on John. Maybe that's why I like those 2 the best. But and also Psalms, the hymn book of the Hebrews. Beautiful, beautiful. Favorite place you've ever traveled? I've been, I'd have to say, to Iraq. I've been to a lot of places all over the world, all over Asia and South America, and Mexico anyway, and Europe and the Middle East. But I have to say that when we went to do our filming for the documentary we did on Abraham, to go back to Iraq to the very beginning, yeah, it was war-torn and there was ISIS was there and everything else, but still the adventure and the intrigue of being there, going back 4,000 years in biblical history, has to be my favorite place I've ever traveled. But then again, I love Italy. Italy's wonderful, especially Rome. Favorite places to go on pilgrimage? Well, we have led I've been to Israel over 180 times, and I know Italy probably over 150 times. And those are probably my two favorite places. There's nowhere like being up in Galilee, around the Sea of Galilee, and in Jerusalem. And when it comes to Rome and the glory of Christendom, and you can't beat the food either. So Israel and Rome, I'd have to say, for those. Best decade of your life? When I was in my 30s, I think, because during that time we had just been married, we had our kids, we were homeschooling. It was those delightful years of starting out on this great family adventure, but also during that time, God blessed us with being able to travel, and we went to Europe and traveled through 13 countries with our kids in diapers, and it was just the most amazing thing. We were very poor, but we saw things that were unbelievable, and God just did so many things in our life, and we had so many miracles take place during that decade of our life. But that was hard because every decade of our life, God has done unusual and amazing things. But I'd have to say in my 30s, I read a lot of books during that decade too, which really laid a foundation for me as well. What's the best thing about being a dad? Being married to their wonderful mother. That is the best thing. But also just to be part of a family. And to now, my youngest is 28 and my oldest is 42, and we have 18 grandchildren, and they're being homeschooled, and just the joy and pleasure and pride of watching them grow and develop into wonderful young Catholic men and women, and the pride of being their grandpa and being called Papa with such honor. I just love it. Okay. What's the most common question you receive as an apologist? Hands down, it's what do I do about my family who have left the church? What do I do about my kids? We raised them in Catholic schools. We did this, and now they've left the faith. What should I do? Well, I would just say two things about that. Number one, I wrote an article. It's on Catholic Answers magazine. It's called 6 Rules for Dealing with Non-Catholic Family and Friends. It's been helpful to a lot of people. But I would just say that kids love what their parents love, and you folks, what you're doing with your kids in this academy, you are laying the foundation that if your kids are going to stay Catholic, you're doing the right thing to make that happen. So keep it up. But that's the number one question, and it's always heart-wrenching because people always ask me with tears in their eyes, and it's you got to be empathetic and help people in that situation because it is sad. But keep loving the Lord, raise your kids right, be enthusiastic about the faith, and you probably will not have to worry about that down the road. What wisdom or advice do you have for our parishioners and the academy parents? Keep doing what you're doing. There's nothing more important than your kids. Not money, not traveling, not pleasure, nothing. Nothing is more important than your kids. Take it from an old guy like me now who looks back and sees his 18 grandkids and the numbers growing, and the great pride of having realized that the family is like a great masterpiece of art, and it takes a whole lifetime to finish that beautiful masterpiece, but there's nothing more important. And someday that masterpiece, we want it to be hanging up in the hallways of heaven. Our family up there to be well, whatever the word is, but up the great masterpiece of the family up in the halls of heaven. So just the answer is keep doing what you're doing. Spend time with your family. Make that the number one thing in raising them for the Lord. Can you give us a 30-second synopsis of what God's done in your life? My goodness. He raised me in a family that had just become Baptists. My mom and dad at a Billy Graham crusade in 1953 had just become Baptists after 12 years of miscarriages, and they became Christians and asked God to give them children that they would raise them for Jesus. And I was born then, a year later, and have been raised in such a family that loved Jesus. And then when I was 39, my wife and I, that was another great thing, is finding that beautiful woman, Janet. And when we got married, then to discover the Catholic Church at 39 years old, and God opened my blind eyes to the beauty of the fullness of the faith. So being raised in a Baptist family and seeing the holiness and love of my parents, and then to discover the Catholic Church, it's been 27 years now. And to have a beautiful family, I would say that I could go on, and I do in my conversion story, but that's long enough about my life. Do you know the words and motions of Baby Shark? Oh my goodness, what grandpa doesn't know? Grandpa Shark, do 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 do, Grandpa Shark, do do. What? And now I'm going to have that song stuck in my head for the rest of the day and probably tomorrow too. Thanks a lot for that. What would you give a shout out to the Web-a-thon? Absolutely, I'd give a shout out. You're doing a great thing, and I know under this whole virus hysteria that's going on in the world and the fear of all of that, everybody's staying home and doing things virtually. But God bless you for being creative and doing these kind of things, and may God bless your school. And I have to say, I love Father Sirico, his politics and his economics. He's been a hero of mine all along. You're very blessed to be in that parish and very blessed to be a part of that academy. So do whatever you can to support and help it. And I'm glad I could do a little part here. And God bless all of you. Bye-bye.